Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 200 based on novel. So let's start. Under Xiao Yan's slow refining, the powder of Shijin powder actually burns in the different fire. The impurities in it are constantly removed under the refining of the different fire and turn into milky viscous liquid bit by bit, covering the meridians up and down Xiao Yan's body. When those viscous liquids covered the meridians, different from different fire, they actually sent out a burst of temperature that made Xiao Yang unbearable, just like roasting Xiao Yang's whole body, which made the latter's face twist. The red face looked very painful, and there was a creaking grinding sound between the teeth, which sounded quite harsh. However, with the slow passage of time, the meridians in Xiao Yang's body are slowly recovering under the medicinal power of the viscous liquid. Not only the meridians are completely restored, but even their toughness is better than before. In this way, it is undoubtedly of great benefit to Xiao Yang's future battle and the mobilization of fighting spirit. Sure enough, it's bitter before sweet. How can you have far more power than ordinary people without experiencing painful hardships? Everything about Xiao Yang seems to be constantly and repeatedly confirming this truth, and Xiao Yang himself is repeatedly washed away in such pain. Eat bitterness in bitterness, and you will become a superior. This is the eternal way of the strong. This process lasted for 2 days, and in these 2 days, Xiao Yang was constantly challenging his tolerance limit, swallowing and refining those Shijin powder repeatedly. In the twinkling of an eye, the original huge stone pool gradually bottomed out in Xiao Yang's crazy swallowing and refining. It seems that Xiao Yang has a certain resistance to the pain caused by Shijin powder after swallowing and refining for a long time. Unknowingly, the power of Shijin powder seems to be no longer as terrible as that. Even, Xiao Yang's red face gradually changed to plain later. Until the last Shijin powder was used up, Xiao Yang seemed to wake up from a big dream. Unexpectedly, Shijin powder has been consumed by itself, which has completely consumed the stock of the guy outside for many years. Deep in the cave full of fluorescence, Xiao Yang glanced awkwardly. He didn't expect that the end would be like this. After all, this is a place where people have worked hard for many years. Now he has made it like this. Even with Xiao Yang's face, he can't help but feel a little hot. Embarrassed to touch his nose, Xiao Yang got up and easily put the boulder back to its original position. Even if he was shy, he went out with an old face. At the mouth of the cave, Xiao Yang found that the middle-aged man was sitting on the edge of the pit he had smashed out. His eyes stared at the void in front of him. Until Xiao Yang came behind him, the latter suddenly woke up and quickly retreated. When he found that the visitor was Xiao Yang, he stopped his action and bowed to salute. "Sir, You have used it well." Yes." His eyes twinkled in response. Xiao Yang was embarrassed. Seeing that the man seemed to be returning to the cave, his face changed greatly and hurried to stop him. In the latter's surprised eyes, he smiled and sent him several bottles of pills and herbs that could promote his cultivation. After that, Xiao Yang quickly left here in the grateful eyes of the middle-aged man. Seeing Xiao Yang leave quickly, the middle-aged man returned to the cave with a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, he could get so many good things in just a few days. However, the smile on his face gradually solidified after he moved the huge stone and found the empty stone pool under it. In the distant mountains and forests, Xiao Yang clearly heard the shrill scream from the rear. However, just as Xiao Yang was about to accelerate to leave here, the blood force in his body suddenly shook. Buzz! For a moment, Xiao Yang was instantly fixed in the void. The hairs on his body suddenly stood up. A breath that made him feel extremely dangerous was flying slowly over his head. Shua! Even though he felt extremely frightened in his heart, after all, Xiao Yang still endured the blood force that was about to explode in his body and looked up hard. Looking from a distance, on those 9 days, there was a huge shadow that blocked the sky and the sun. It was like a sudden change of weather. At the moment, the whole mountain range where he was becoming dark. However, when Xiao Yang carefully saw the huge figure flying above the 9 days, his body trembled violently, and his body was covered with cold sweat. This is Tianyao Huang clan, The heart trembled and spit out this sentence. Suddenly, in the blood vessels in the body, the blood force that was being suppressed by it was struggling more violently and almost broke out. And this blood force is the dragon phoenix blood of the dragon family. Once the blood of Longhuang breaks out, Xiao Yan can't imagine what consequences it will have and how much impact it will have on himself. Well, while Xiao Yang was trying his best to suppress the blood of the dragon phoenix in the mountains and forests below, several human figures were sitting on the back of the huge bird and beast in the sky. A young blonde among them suddenly frowned. Just a moment ago, the blood force in his body seemed to produce a slight tremor. That kind of tremor, it doesn't mean to flourish. On the contrary, it's a strange feeling of being suppressed. What's the matter? Beside the blonde youth, a beautiful young woman with the same blonde hair seemed to find the emotional changes of the youth and asked with a smile. Just now, I seem to feel another blood force. The blonde man said solemnly. On hearing the speech, the woman smiled and said, "Don't forget, this is their territory now. It's normal for us to feel the power of blood. There's nothing to worry about. Hope it's just my illusion." After hearing the speech, the blonde man frowned and thought for a while. He took back his mind and looked straight ahead again. Under the slow flying of the giant bird under him, he flew away to the depths of the western wasteland. For a long time after these people were completely far away, Xiao Yang in the mountains and forests calmed down from the terrible pressure just now. He gasped violently in his mouth and sat down on the ground. He was tired as if he had relieved his strength, and his heart was shocked for a long time. Suddenly, in a twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang is only 8 months away from the so-called 1-year period. 8 months is neither long nor short. In 8 months, nothing can be changed. At the same time, it may subvert everything. In the desolate desert, mountains and rivers are everywhere, with flying sand and rocks. The more you go deep into the western wasteland, the more rare the green color you can see in front of you. Like the green mountains you saw earlier, they are no longer there, but like the previous scene, even if you look at the whole western wasteland, they are extremely rare. There are many strange stones in the Gobi, forming a huge stone forest. Although it seems deserted, it can resist the violence in the strong wind because of the relationship between the stone forest. It also makes it invisible and become a refuge for creatures. At the same time, it is also a chaotic place full of killing. Somewhere in the stone forest, there is a fairly open space. At the moment, there are several huge Warcraft corpses. The blood has already dried up. The huge body is rapidly dried in this dry environment. The strong bloody smell emitted from it makes other Warcraft in the stone forest frightened. Even some powerful Warcraft also dare not approach here. In the middle of the open space, at the moment, a figure dressed in black is sitting here. Beside him, a purple and gold steel body stands impressively. The evil spirit that is invisible is even more frightening. On the ground, the sitting figure was closing his eyes and breathing harmoniously. His hands made a cultivation knot. In his body, the skill worked rapidly and absorbed the mottled energy between heaven and earth madly. Between heaven and earth, the complex energy gathered under the tear of the strange suction, condensed into a huge energy vortex on the top of the figure, like a storm, pouring all the continuous energy of heaven and earth into the black-robed figure in front of him. Then, after the refining of the strange fire, it turned into a trace of pure energy droplets and flashed, it disappeared into cyclone space. Until a long time later, Xiao Yang slowly withdrew from the cultivation state. His eyes trembled slightly, revealing his next pair of dark and bright eyes. Feeling the fighting energy in his body once again, Xiao Yang couldn't help taking a long breath and stood up. His sight swept over the huge corpses in front of him and shrugged helplessly. These Warcraft would not have died in his hands, but these guys seemed quite dissatisfied with Xiao Yang's visit. They even shot Xiao Yang together, but they died miserably under the iron fist of the North King. A group of first-class fighting emperors are not enough to see the power of the North King. They are basically the result of one punch, which further confirms the power of the strong. In front of the high-level fighting emperor, the ordinary strong fighting emperor is like a child. In the eyes of the more powerful strong, the truth is even more so. He moved his muscles and bones a little. Then Xiao Yang sat down again. As soon as his palm turned over, a transparent crystal box appeared between Xiao Yang's hands. In the crystal box, a whole body is snow white, and only the flower core contains a circle of light purple flowers the size of your thumb, standing leisurely. It's Fuzanghua. Looking at the hibiscus flower in his arms, Xiao Yang's steady mood was involuntarily nervous. The 6-petal hibiscus flower was the only strange situation Xiao Yang had seen in his life. He had never heard that the hibiscus flower could produce 6 petals. If this thing in front of him was a heterogeneous species and swallowed it and refined, it would probably bring great harm to Xiao Yang himself. Sirius will even infringe on his life, which is the reason why its original owner did not dare to devour it, but was used for auction. There are countless creatures on the mainland, many of which are heterogeneous. Those things are often infected by foreign objects, so they will change. Just like that Haimu, who was originally a great wizard of the Shenling family, finally became bloodthirsty because of the infection of foreign objects. For the purpose of swallowing the same kind, he pursues the power he thinks. This mentality is crazy. Xiao Yang doesn't want to change into that shape for any reason. Because of this, looking at the exquisite 6-petal flower in the crystal box at the moment, Xiao Yang was unable to make a decision. He knew in his heart that every decision he made now was not just about himself. Guarding the crystal box in his arms, Xiao Yang temporarily fell into meditation and hesitated in his heart. If the Fusang flower can be swallowed and refined smoothly, it will undoubtedly bring him endless benefits. With the Fusang flower, Xiao Yang's soul strength will be greatly improved. If nothing happens, he is likely to reach the middle stage of the 4th-level herbalist. At that time, he will meet the 9-star fighting emperors of the Array Mage Association with their own means. Xiao Yang is able to be fearless. But now, the problem that worries Xiao Yang is that once there is a change in the process of refining Fusang flower, he will not only lose his strength, but also very likely lose his nature under the impact of Fusang flower's powerful soul power. From then on, he will be transformed into a killing machine, and everything will disappear. If you succeed, your soul power will soar, your combat power will soar, and you will be further away from the real strong. But if you lose, although you don't die, Xiao Yang's mind will fall into darkness and will no longer be a man. When Xiao Yang is lost in chaos and darkness, Zuna, who should rescue him? Xiao Yang is most worried about Zuna. Zuna, he whispered in his mouth. At the thought of the latter, Xiao Yang's mood immediately sank down. The atmosphere in the space became inexplicably depressed. Xiao Yang's eyes closed. His ruddy face gradually became red, and his mood was completely depressed. After a few short breaths, the emotion of sadness and resentment was like a volcanic eruption from the bottom of Xiao Yang's heart. The sitting body trembled violently at this moment, and the crazy killing intention surged out in his heart. The magnificent energy in his body suddenly gushed out uncontrollably. Boom! The terrible energy storm took Xiao Yang as the center and swept out in all directions. In an instant, it smashed the large stone forest within 100 feet around Xiao Yang into a pair of rubble. The powerful energy poured out continuously, until after a good film, Xiao Yang, who couldn't help shaking, suddenly woke up, his closed eyes suddenly opened, and the crazy killing intention condensed in the depths of his eyes also retreated quickly like a tide, and the terrorist energy gushed out suddenly dispersed. His forehead was covered with cold sweat again. Xiao Yang's eyes were scarlet. Angry tears swirled in his eyes. He kept panting, as if he had endured some great pain. He looked quite amazing. It was not until half an hour later that Xiao Yang's trembling body gradually stabilized. The violent mood in his heart seemed to be vented and subsided slowly. Xiao Yang's face also recovered as usual. However, in his eyes, there was an expression of determination. Zuna, even if I really fall into the dark abyss, I will bring you back. When the words in Xiao Yang's heart fell, the crystal box in his arms burst almost at the same time, and the Fusang flower in the middle was so exposed to the air. Buzzing, buzzing. At that time, a gentle fragrance like a breeze suddenly came to his face. Although the aroma was strong, it didn't choke his nose. On the contrary, after Xiao Yang inhaled these smells, his spirit was shocked. The soul beads in his eyebrows that hadn't risen for a long time also trembled slightly at this moment. Feeling the throbbing of soul beads, Xiao Yang immediately felt a sense of surprise at the bottom of his heart. From this point of view alone, it seems that Fusang flower has no bad impact on the human body. Now that he has made up his mind, Xiao Yang doesn't hesitate anymore. When he opens his mouth, a Mori white flame suddenly sprays out of his mouth and wraps the hibiscus flowers in front of him. Then, it turns into a fist-sized flame light. After a slight flicker on Xiao Yang's head, it actually enters Xiao Yang's mind. Buzzing, buzzing. In my mind, the flame light group stopped not far from the soul bead. Then, a huge soul force gushed out from the fusarium flowers in the light group. Unexpectedly, it formed invisible energy streams. Surrounded by different fires, it surrounded the fusarium flowers like a small snake. Hey! Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang, who was observing Fusang flowers, picked his eyebrows slightly. He couldn't help feeling surprised. The soul power gushing out of the soul streams was obviously very pure and huge. Xiao Yang had no doubt that he could easily refine and absorb it. It's really shocking that such pure soul power can be bred in heaven and earth. The mystery of this world is really elusive. It can not only produce thousands of magical creatures, but also produce such pure and huge soul power that seems impossible in the eyes of ordinary people. I'm afraid the purity of these soul forces can be compared with those soul origins refined by Xiao Yang in the past. It's a pity that although this thing is pure, its gentleness is far less than the soul origin. Therefore, it can't be swallowed by the remnant soul of Xiao Xian. The soul bead trembled slightly, and the soul power separated from it, and turned into Xiao Yang's figure on one side. Immediately, the heart moved, and the bone spirit cold fire surrounding the Fusang flower quietly retreated, revealing the snow-white flowers under it, as well as several soul streams-like substance, swirling around the Fusang flower. When the bone spirit cold fire dispersed, those soul streams seemed to break free from the bondage, carefully tested, gradually extended outward and slowly approached the direction of soul beads. With the extension of the soul stream, Xiao Yang clearly saw that the light milky light shining on the surface of Fusang flower was actually slightly dim, as if its power had been taken away. Poof! The strange fire rose and completely wrapped the soul beads. Seeing that the soul streams like tentacles approached the soul beads, Xiao Yang couldn't help but be a little nervous. He slowly held his hands. His mind controlled the bone spirit cold fire and was always ready to deal with any situation in the field. Until those soul streams touched the soul beads, the huge and pure soul power immediately injected into Xiao Yang's soul beads. Boom! For a moment, Xiao Yang only felt that in the depths of his soul, a huge soul force surged up like a river into the sea. The black soul bead suddenly trembled violently. Immediately after that, a powerful soul force swept from the soul bead uncontrollably. Outside, Xiao Yang's sitting body was shocked. An invisible energy wave brought terrible spatial ripples and swept away in all directions. Buzz! In the twinkling of an eye, in the positive stone forest where Xiao Yang was located, all warcraft were heavily crushed to the ground under the threat of this terrible soul. It was like carrying a huge mountain. Their huge bodies were deeply embedded in the earth and could not move. Even the huge fighting energy in their bodies could not be mobilized at this moment. Deep fear haunts the hearts of all warcraft in the stone forest. If they can reach this level, their intelligence will not be lower than human beings. Therefore, they immediately know the source of the soul pressure. Unfortunately, what they can only do now is to try their best not to explode and die under the terrible soul pressure. As time went by, the soul pressure shrouded over the stone forest gradually became more and more powerful and terrible. Under this terrible pressure, the fighting spirit in the body was forcibly compressed, so that it was even on the verge of explosion. Under the pressure of Xiao Yang's terrible soul, the fighting spirit in these warcraft was extremely compressed. The obedient fighting spirit became violent at the moment. If they continue to compress like this, they will explode and die. The wail sounded in this vast stone forest, but the terrible soul pressure shrouded in heaven and earth was still increasing. Until a certain moment, when the huge soul pressure was about to crush these warcraft, Xiao Yang in the depths of the stone forest suddenly appeared in his mind. Hiss, hiss. The soul bead, which was constantly absorbing the power of the soul, suddenly made a hissing sound. In a moment, Xiao Yang's face changed suddenly and his heart moved. The bone spirit cold fire still went up and wrapped the whole soul bead. At the same time, the soul stream connecting the soul bead and fusang flower was forcibly cut off by Xiao Yang at this moment. Damn it, is there a problem? Xiao Yang felt a huge shock in his heart. When he stared at it, his heart trembled suddenly, and an extremely bad premonition burst out from the bottom of his heart. I saw that the surface of the soul bead, which was originally dark at the moment, was gradually becoming transparent. Through the outer layer of the soul bead, Xiao Yang vaguely saw that in the depths of his soul bead, a flower and bone flower like a stamen was standing in the bud. At the same time, Xiao Yang also clearly felt that in his soul beads, the huge soul power that had just been swallowed up suddenly lost control of them. Moreover, what shocked Xiao Yang more was that he found that his soul origin was being quickly swallowed by the flower. Fusang flower, which should have been swallowed by Xiao Yang, at this moment, actually began to swallow Xiao Yang's soul power. It seems that not only does Xiao Yang want to devour Fuzanghua, but the latter seems to have the same idea for him. Deep in the stone forest, Xiao Yang, dressed in a black robe, was sitting here. His eyes were closed and his face was pale. It can be seen from his frown that the latter seems to be suffering a great pain at this time. In his mind, Xiao Yang stared at the soul beads in front of him with a dignified look on his face. The soul bead, which should have been a dark color, shows a soft white at this time, but the white is not the proper color of the soul bead, but emanates from the interior of the soul bead. The soft white light is as soft as a pearl, which makes people feel no threat. There is even an impulse to hold it in their arms and enjoy it carefully, but all this is particularly terrible in Xiao Yang's eyes at this time. Under this seemingly pure and soft white light, the flower and bone flower that quickly took root in Xiao Yang's soul has begun to bloom at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, a huge suction force is also released from the flower and bone flower, just like an invisible ghost hand, tearing the huge soul power contained in the soul bead into it. Hiss! The tearing pain from the depths of his soul made Xiao Yang bite his teeth and take a breath. At this moment, his muscles tightened, his green tendons burst and twisted, just like jumping out of his skin. The pain from the depths of the soul makes Xiao Yang impossible to avoid. The source of the soul contained in the soul bead is being frantically bitten by the strange flowers and bones like a jackal at the moment. Even the soul shadow condensed by Xiao Yang becomes gradually dimmed, and finally, it dissipates uncontrollably. Damn it! Can you only watch it? The scream of pain came out at the bottom of Xiao Yang's heart. Xiao Yang was frightened to find that as the source of the soul was forcibly swallowed up by the strange flower, the function of his body was rapidly decreasing, the rhythm of breathing became slower and slower, and the anger belonging to the living people was rapidly dissipating. This body has been out of Xiao Yang's own control, just like a corpse, and Xiao Yang's own soul is being quickly swallowed by the strange flower. Xiao Yang's consciousness becomes blurred with the gradual weakening of the origin of the soul. Once Xiao Yang's consciousness dissipates completely, he will officially declare his death. Seeing that his soul source is about to be swallowed up, Xiao Yang has no means to stop all this. Soul beads are where the soul lives. Fighting spirit can't enter at all. If you break in forcibly, you will not get any effect, but will cause irreparable damage to the origin of the soul. Therefore, before the last moment, Xiao Yang must think again anyway. At the same time, the Array Mage Association in Jin Yaocheng. Qin Yun, what do you mean? In the main hall, Fan Siyuan and other senior members of the Dry Array Mage Association sat opposite Qin Yun and others. Fan Siyuan's eyes slowly swept over the 5 people standing behind Qin Yun, looking solemn. These 5 people are all genuine 9-star fighting emperors. In addition to the 2 strong fighting emperors guarding Qin Yun that day, there are 2 more. In particular, when he looked at the man behind Qin Yun who was covered in black robes and could vaguely see the mask on his face, his heart sank. With this look alone, he could see that this man's strength was above him. Hehe, President Fan, I wonder if you are interested in what I mentioned that day? Hearing the speech, Qin Yun smiled faintly, held the teacup in one hand, took a sip on his mouth, glanced at the latter, and asked with a smile. You mean working with you? Or join us? As soon as Fan Siyuan's voice fell, Qin Yun opened his mouth impolitely, showing his rebellious meaning in his words. You dream. Let me join you in the Array Mage Association. How is this possible? Hearing Qin Yun's words, Qi Ming's Huolier suddenly snorted angrily and slapped heavily on the table. The terrible force immediately burst the table. Behind Qin Yun, the standing figures immediately took half a step forward, and the powerful momentum swept through fiercely, suppressing the anger in Huolier's heart in an instant. Old 3. Fan Siyuan frowned and scolded in a deep voice. The latter took back his eyes with a trembling face. Young Master Qin, you have dominated the western regions for many years. You are just a 5-star fighting emperor. If you really want to deal with it, don't you still catch it with your hand, not to mention your father. President Fan, I came to you this time just to ask you how you think about what I mentioned. If you are willing to join us, it will be of endless benefits to both of us. If you are not willing, I can't force it. Therefore, I just want to know the answer I want. When Fan Siyuan mentioned his father, Qin Yun couldn't help but flash a faint light in his eyes. His eyes stared at the latter with burning eyes, which made Fan Siyuan feel a little cold in his heart. After Qin Yun's words fell, Fan Siyuan and the people of the Array Mage Association were silent. The three looked at each other, their eyes met, and they thought secretly in their hearts. Although Qin Yun's words sounded free and easy, as far as today's battle was concerned, it was obviously a bad comer, but after all, Fan Siyuan shook his head, raised his eyes to Qin Yun and said solemnly, "In my opinion, it's not necessary. Although the boy has extraordinary combat power, our Array Mage Association is not a soft persimmon. With his own strength, it's impossible to really do anything to us. We are very grateful for Mr. Qin's sincere invitation, but I also believe that we have the ability to deal with him." When saying this, Fan Siyuan couldn't help looking at the black-robed man behind Qin Yun, and a dignified color flashed in his eyes. Hearing this, Qin Yun's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tiny invisible light flashed through his pupils. He immediately smiled, put down his teacup and stood up. "Since President Fan said so, I won't bother much. I just hope the Array Mage Association can be safe and sound." After talking, Qin Yun no longer had the slightest hesitation. As soon as he turned around, he walked outside the hall with the follow of the 5 people behind him. Later, Fan Siyuan and others also greeted each other with a smile. After sending the 6 away, Fan Siyuan's face darkened. As soon as his eyes turned, he looked at Qi Ming standing on one side, frowned tightly, and felt a sense of uneasiness in his heart. "Inform the whole city and block Jinyaro City. No one is allowed to go in and out." As Xiao Yang's soul source was gradually swallowed, the snow-white flower and bone blossoms in the soul bead had also bloomed. The snow-white flower looks like 5 petals, just like the Fusang flower known to Xiao Yang, and its size almost fills the interior of the whole soul bead. At the moment, the appearance of the soul bead looks like a thin layer of glass, which seems to be likely to break at any time. However, through the outer layer of the soul bead, if you look carefully, you can find that on the 5-petal leaves of this Fusang flower, between the small meridians, thin lines painted black cover the 5 petals like a network, and the faint fluorescence flows slowly from it. Finally, it turns into a continuous stream of energy, pouring out from the 5 petals. At the core of the Fusang flower, a black bead the size of a palm is spinning. Around it, there is a small stream of black strange energy, condensed into the shape of a dragon snake, entrenching the painted black bead, and at the same time, a fierce suction diffuses, tearing off the little power left on the black bead. Immediately, it was devoured by its ruthlessness. At the same time, it also includes the wisps of energy gushing from the 5-petaled flowers. This black bead is naturally the only source of Xiao Yang's soul at the moment, and the Jiao snake around him is the culprit who caused Xiao Yang to fall into such a situation. Most of Xiao Yang's soul origin has been swallowed by this strange thing. Even the only soul origin left by the latter at the moment is about to be swallowed up. Moreover, not only Xiao Yang, but also the soul power of this Fusang flower itself, seems to be constantly absorbed and swallowed by it. So it seems that not only Xiao Yang has been violated, but also the Fusang flower has been eroded by the strange Jiao snake. It is not easy for such a dense black network to take root to such a degree. It is obvious that this Fusang flower has been eroded by the dragon snake for a long time. However, looking at the appearance of the Fusang flower, it seems that it has not been completely eroded. The soul power in Fusang Flower is still extremely huge. At least, before Fusang Flower was forced to invade Xiao Yang's soul bead, there was definitely more than 80% of the soul power, but after it entered Xiao Yang's soul bead, all this changed. However, at this time, Xiao Yang has no time to take these into account. What he is worried about now is his soul power, which can no longer support for a long time. If he doesn't make any more moves, I'm afraid the last trace of his soul will be swallowed up by the strange dragon snake soon. Drink. Bone Spirit Cold Fire, refine it for me. Suddenly, the sound of Xiao Yang's violent drinking came from the depths of his soul, forcibly controlling a few soul forces. Xiao Yang mobilized the different fire in his body and rushed into his mind. The fierce flame wrapped the soul beads, and the terrible high temperature was suddenly released. Unexpectedly, he planned to refine the soul beads. This is also the only way Xiao Yang thought of to change the current situation and save himself. Most of the soul origin has been swallowed by the strange Jiao snake. The soul bead that should belong to Xiao Yang has also lost Xiao Yang's control over it. Now, in the soul bead, except Xiao Yang's own few soul origins, the rest of the power is under the control of the Jiao snake. This is equivalent to that this soul bead does not belong to Xiao Yang at the moment. Since the soul bead does not belong to him for the time being, Xiao Yang will not worry about it. As long as he can refine the huge soul power in the soul bead, Xiao Yang believes that he can not only recover the soul bead, but also restore his soul power to the peak, or even a higher level. As for the soul beads, as long as they are not destroyed by fighting spirit, the high temperature of different fire can penetrate them. While ensuring the soul power of refining, they cannot destroy the soul beads, which is undoubtedly the result Xiao Yang is most willing to see. Now, what Xiao Yang needs to do is to use different fire to refine this soul bead that almost doesn't belong to him. Together with the Fusang flower in it, it is also refined by different fire. Without this process before, now Xiao Yang picked it up and returned all that he should have. The rest is naturally what he can have. Of course, this process will inevitably consume part of the soul power in the soul lost pearl, but compared with being swallowed up by this ghost, Xiao Yang will undoubtedly choose the former. What's more, now the hibiscus is still there. As long as he can refine the hibiscus, Xiao Yang believes that he can also advance to the 4th level herbalist. But before that, he was destined to go through a trouble. The soul bead is wrapped in the raging flame, the terrible high temperature is released, and the refining process officially begins at this moment. Sure enough, at the moment when the bone spirit cold fire released the high temperature, the soul beads in front of us suddenly trembled violently. The approaching of the strange fire seemed to make this strange soul force feel an undue threat. Buzzing, buzzing. A burst of buzzing and trembling. Within the soul bead, the majestic soul force suddenly gushed out and condensed rapidly. It condensed into a real protective cover in the outer layer of the soul bead to resist the invasion of different fire. At the same time, the internal phagocytic force of the soul bead became more fierce at this moment, and the phagocytosis of Xiao Yang's soul source became more fierce. This thing seems to know that Xiao Yang is controlling the strange fire. It wants to speed up the speed to erase Xiao Yang's consciousness, which makes the latter slightly surprised. However, the refining speed of the strange fire is much faster than the former. When the terrible high temperature touched the protective cover, a violent hissing sound sounded on the protective cover. Under the refining of different fire, the breath of the protective cover condensed by the soul power dissipated rapidly. After a few hours, the protective cover broke, and all the soul power contained therein became the nourishment of Xiao Yang. Absorbed these pure soul power, Xiao Yang's weak soul source in the soul bead was also temporarily comforted. Seeing that the dissipated source became strong under the injection of this soul power, it also slowed down the swallowing speed of the strange Jiao snake. At the same time, the bone spirit cold fire outside the soul bead also began to emit a more scorching high temperature towards the interior of the soul bead. As Xiao Yang predicted, the soul bead itself will not be affected by temperature. Therefore, after the flame penetrates the soul bead, it directly begins to refine the huge soul power contained therein. This video will end here.